With us now, Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, Liz Kendall. Thank you very much for being with us. I'm going to come on to your brief in a moment, but just on that story, as you sat down, you were paying attention to what we saw there. This is not a new issue, unfortunately. What are the government going to do to make sure that disparity is closed?
It isn't a new issue. Before I became an MP, I ran a charity called the Maternity Alliance, which campaigned for better rights and services for pregnant women and new parents. And all of these issues have been going on for decades. We need strong action and swift action, which is what I know the government is doing. We need to make sure the training is right in this area, that the views of women like this are heard loud and clear, and that we tackle some of these deep-rooted prejudices that are there to make sure all women get the best possible care.
You said the word prejudice. Is it racism? Is that the reason that this is happening?
No, I think that there are, the incorrect views here about what's happening. And I think when I've seen this being tackled, if women are part of that process of training to explain their different views, that is what's going to make a real difference, because it is unacceptable that there are such inequalities in maternity care, and I know that the Health Secretary is really concerned about that.
Yeah, and Baroness Valerie Amos is currently leading a review and is due to report back soon, we hope. All right, let's move on to your brief then, social media and AI. Now, when I saw that you were coming on to talk to us today, I thought you're talking about another consultation. I thought you just launched a consultation back in January. What's the difference about this one today than the one?
No, there's a few things we're doing today. First of all, we are announcing that we will close the gap in the law around AI chatbots. We're really concerned about the impact that those are having on children and young people, but also to make sure that they are not allowed to spread illegal content online. We're taking that action immediately. The second thing we're doing, and this is as a result of campaigners who have suffered terrible tragedies where children have died and they've wanted to get hold of the data on what their kids have been looking at online. And we will legislate to make it automatic that coroners actually have to notify Ofcom to keep that data in case it's had an impact on children's death. And thirdly, that we're taking powers in a bill that's coming through Parliament, which will enable us to implement the results of the consultation we've got on social media for children, including whether we should ban it, because the Online Safety Act took, depending on who you listen to, 8 years to put into practice. And as the legislation is changing so quickly, we've got to act more quickly, and that's what we're announcing today.
Okay. So the second part of that, of what you're announcing there, is that Jules law? This is based around a 14-year-old who died as a result of what his mother thinks was an internet challenge, and they were unable to get his recent scrolling history.
That's absolutely right. And I recently met with Ellen and bereaved families, and I was really struck by what they'd had to go through, and we're acting immediately to make it automatic that you have to keep that data. Ellen rightly says, but what we need to do is stop that data being, that content being out there in the first place. She's right on that too, and the other steps that we were taking will enable us to look at all of these issues, not just on existing social media platforms, but these new AI chatbots, which have actually started being used after we passed that initial legislation.
Just a bit more on the detail. You said there's a gap in the law surrounding AI. Just explain to our viewers what that gap is and
so currently the Online Safety Act does cover AI chatbots that do live search, and it covers AI chatbots where you can share content between users. But if it's just, say, the child or the young person talking to an AI chatbot just on their own, that isn't covered. And I am worried about that, because we do need to make sure that anything children see online is safe, that it doesn't cause harm, that it isn't spreading content promoting self-harm or suicide, and that is the action that we are setting out today.
So you're going to try and make it tougher on firms. You got tough on X over Grok not long ago, and they seemed to listen to the government's decision.
But we will be vigilant about that.
Right.
We will be vigilant, but they did change.
Just the point I'm coming to, Secretary of State, is that what more pressure can be put onto these tech firms to make sure that these sites are actually sites that children can be on? Because you'll know there is some resistance from some children's groups, the NSPCC and the Molly Russell Foundation.
And that is why, look, your viewers will, many parents many teachers, they want social media for the under-16s banned. But organisations like the NSPCC and the Molly Rose Foundation worry about that because they say we'll just put all of this stuff underground, more on the deep web, and that it will cause a cliff edge at age 16.
Yes.
They want to stop the tech companies putting that on in the first place. That's why we're having the consultation. But we are today announcing we're going to look at even more measures, like stranger pairing on games, because that is
things
risky.
like Roblox and the other
Exactly,
games.
whether that should come under a ban if we put that forward, or have age restrictions. Live streaming is another thing people have said they're concerned about, and to stop people actually sending and children receiving, blocking them totally, not just blurring them, naked pictures. We know there are all sorts of concerns. And I would just say one thing, which is the technology is developing really, really fast. And I think the Online Safety Act, taking 8 years to pass this legislation and see it implemented, is too slow. We need to make sure we can constantly keep up to date with this, because that is what parents, families and young people need to keep them safe online. I am not a patient person. I want to act swiftly, but we need to do that in the right way, and that's what the Prime Minister will be announcing today.
Yeah, I want to speak to you about the Prime Minister in just a moment, but there have been attempts to try and bring in fines on some of these sites before. 4chan was fined $520,000 for failing to comply with the Online Safety Act, and it's just not going to pay. These are US-based sites. How are you going to pressurise these companies into actually complying with our laws?
Let me just say, it is their responsibility.
It may well be sensitive, but they're not doing it.
And the Ofcom has powers not only to fine these companies up to 10% of their relevant worldwide revenue, but also, if they repeatedly refuse to obey the law of the land, they can block them. That is what we said when Grok was spreading awful sexualised pictures of women and children. They changed. We'll be vigilant on it. It is important that the responsibility lies with those companies, and it is also important that Ofcom acts swiftly, and we are clear that for those companies that repeatedly refuse to obey the law, Ofcom has the full force of this government support to implement those measures.
So in a word, if they don't comply, you will ban these firms?
It is for Ofcom, as the legislation is set up, they have the power to fine them, and if they repeatedly refuse to follow British law, to block them from being available in the UK.
A couple more points. We don't have loads of time. I want to talk to you about you being here today, which we're very happy about, but it is recess. The Prime Minister being out today as well. Is this another attempt at a reset? You guys are going really hard at this. We've been talking about it quite a long time, but the Prime Minister has been on a bit of a journey. His first position on this at the end of last year was, I don't think we should be doing blocks on social media sites. Now he seems to at least be getting in behind, or at least countenancing it. Are we going to start seeing the real key here? Is this the sort of thing he's going to be really digging into?
I think he's been really concerned about children's safety online for a long, long while. But he also wants to see children and young people prepared for the future, because half of our lives now is online, and we've got to get this. For some of the young people. We've got to get this balance right. You know, if I think about children and young people in my own constituency in Leicester, they're worried about the harms, but they also see some good benefits. So I think we have been focused on this issue for a long time. But are we determined to go further and faster? Yes, we are. And why? Because that's what the public wants. You know, change does take time, but we are trying to make that happen as quickly as possible. And I think that the Prime Minister's leadership on that, the reason he's out and about today, is because we've been pushing. We want to find a way to make more progress. And he was appalled with what Grok did, absolutely appalled. And so we want to make sure that can't happen again, that all of these new services are covered by the Act. And I think as a whole, as government and Parliament, we need to see that, just as, you know, every year we have a finance bill with the budget, we're going to have to update legislation very, very quickly, because the technology is moving quickly too.
Couple more topics. It will be as quick as I can. I'm sorry to keep you for so long. Labour Together. There is reporting over the weekend that this closely aligned think tank actually paid a firm to gather evidence on journalists. That reporting last week in The Observer and also last Sunday in the Sunday Times. You, as a government, comfortable being so closely aligned to a company like Labour Together, with these allegations hanging over?
Let me just say this, that the freedom of the press is incredibly important for me personally, but the government as a whole. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for those journalists. You know, they rightly make our lives difficult at times, but that is their job to hold us to account.
But this group seem to be gathering intel on them.
But you will know already that the regulatory body that covers public affairs agencies is looking at that, is investigating it. And I know that the Cabinet Office will also be investigating the facts around this, because I believe that the freedom of the press and the freedom of the press to hold government to account, no matter how difficult it is a really important part of why I'm proud to be a member of a British government.
Secretary of State, I'm told that I've run out of time with you, but it's been good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much, Secretary of State Liz Kendall. Thank you very much, and good morning to you.